There's a peculiar kind of suffering that defines our age. You wake up, you go through the motions, you achieve what you're supposed to achieve. And yet, somewhere deep in your chest, there's this hollow feeling, this sense that you're drifting, that life is happening to you rather than through you. You feel lost, not because you lack a map, but because you've forgotten why you're walking at all. 2,000 years ago, a Roman emperor sat in his military tent on the frozen banks of the Danube River, commanding legions, governing an empire that stretched from Britain to Mesopotamia. Marcus Aurelius had everything our modern world tells us we need to feel fulfilled: power, wealth, legacy, purpose. And yet, in his private writings, what we now call the Meditations, he wrestled with the same existential weight you carry today. The same feeling of being adrift in a universe that seems indifferent to your existence. Marcus Aurelius understood something profound. Feeling lost isn't a personal failure, it's a philosophical crisis. You feel lost because you've been conditioned to seek meaning in places where it cannot exist. You've been taught to find yourself in your career, in other people's validation, in the accumulation of experiences and possessions. But Marcus knew that true direction doesn't come from external coordinates. It comes from an internal compass you've forgotten how to read. Throughout this video, we're going to explore why you feel this way, and more importantly, how the Stoic philosophy of Marcus Aurelius offers a practical framework for rediscovering your direction. This isn't about positive thinking or self-help platitudes. This is about confronting the fundamental questions of existence and building a life of authentic purpose. The insights you're about to receive aren't just philosophical, they're transformative. Because once you understand why you're lost, you'll finally know how to find your way home. The tyranny of external validation. You feel lost because you've outsourced your sense of direction to forces beyond your control. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This isn't just ancient wisdom, it's a diagnostic tool for your current suffering. Think about it. You wake up and immediately check your phone. How many likes, how many messages? Your mood shifts based on whether people responded to you. You go to work, and your sense of worth rises or falls with your boss's approval. You post something online, and you refresh compulsively, measuring your value in real time through the reactions of strangers. You've become a ship without a rudder, blown in whatever direction the social winds happen to be blowing that day. The Stoics called this living according to the opinions of the many. Marcus saw it destroying men in his own court, senators who would shift their entire worldview based on which way the political winds were blowing. Men who had no internal compass because they'd spent their entire lives navigating by the stars of other people's approval. Consider the fall of Lucius Aelius Sejanus, the prefect of the Praetorian Guard under Emperor Tiberius. Sejanus was the second most powerful man in Rome, a position he'd achieved through calculated manipulation and political maneuvering. He lived for power, for the recognition of the Senate, for the fear he could instill in his enemies. His entire identity was wrapped up in his position, his title, his influence. For years, he was untouchable. Then, in a single day, Tiberius turned on him. A letter was read to the Senate denouncing Sejanus. Within hours, he went from the most feared man in Rome to a prisoner. By sunset, he was executed. His statues were torn down. His name was erased from public monuments. And here's the crucial detail. Sejanus had nothing left. No internal resources, no philosophy to fall back on. Because he had built his entire sense of self on external validation, on power that could be granted and therefore could be taken away. He died not just physically, but existentially. He died having never truly lived as himself. You're doing a version of this right now. Maybe you're climbing the corporate ladder, defining yourself by your job title. What happens when you're passed over for promotion? What happens when you're laid off? Maybe you're building your identity around your relationship status. What happens when that relationship ends? Maybe you've become addicted to social media validation, your mood controlled by algorithms designed to keep you anxious and seeking approval. This is why you feel lost. You've been navigating by coordinates that constantly shift. You wake up every day trying to hit a moving target of external expectations, never realizing that the target itself is the problem. First, perform a daily audit. Ask yourself, what decisions did I make today based on how I wanted others to perceive me versus what I actually believed was right? Write them down. You'll be shocked at how many of your choices are dictated by invisible audiences. Second, establish one non-negotiable daily practice that serves no external purpose. Meditate. Journal. Walk without your phone. Do something that has no productivity metric, no audience, no validation attached. This is how you begin to remember who you are when no one's watching. The illusion of permanence. You feel lost because you're trying to build a permanent self in an impermanent universe. Marcus Aurelius was obsessed with impermanence. He'd remind himself constantly, empires fall, stars die, even the memory of the greatest men eventually fades into nothing. He wrote, everything is only for a day, both that which remembers and that which is remembered. Why does this matter to your feeling of being lost? Because you're trying to construct a stable identity in a universe defined by flux. You think, once I achieve X, then I'll know who I am, then I'll feel grounded. But X keeps moving. First it's graduating, then it's getting the job, then it's getting the promotion, then it's getting married, then it's having kids. The goalposts shift because you're playing a game that can't be won. The uncomfortable truth is this: there is no permanent version of you waiting to be discovered. You are a process, not a product. You're a river, not a stone. And you feel lost because you're exhausting yourself trying to freeze the river in place. In the 3rd century BCE, there was a Carthaginian general named Hannibal Barca who nearly destroyed Rome. He crossed the Alps with elephants, won battle after battle against impossible odds, and had Rome on its knees. For 15 years, he was the greatest military threat the Roman Republic had ever faced. His name was synonymous with terror and genius. And then, slowly, the tide turned. Rome adapted. Hannibal was recalled to defend Carthage itself. He lost at the Battle of Zama. Carthage fell. Hannibal spent his final years as a fugitive, running from Roman assassins, taking refuge with minor kings who used him as a political pawn. In the end, he took poison rather than be captured, dying in exile in a small house on the shores of the Sea of Marmara. The man who nearly conquered Rome died forgotten and alone, his identity as a conqueror stripped away year by year. Here's what Marcus would have understood. Hannibal's tragedy wasn't his defeat. It was that he built his entire sense of self on being a conqueror. When that identity dissolved, he had nothing underneath. He couldn't adapt to impermanence because he'd made permanence his god. You're probably doing this with your own identity. You've invested years building a particular version of yourself, the successful professional, the devoted partner, the creative artist, the reliable friend, and now that identity is under threat. Maybe your career isn't progressing how you imagined. Maybe your relationship is ending. Maybe your creative work isn't getting recognition. Maybe your friends have moved on. And instead of allowing yourself to evolve, you're white-knuckling this old version of yourself. Exhausting yourself trying to maintain an identity that no longer fits the reality of your life. That's why you feel lost. Not because you don't know who you are, but because you're clinging to who you were, or who you thought you were supposed to be. First, practice memento mori. Remember death. Not in a morbid way, but as a clarifying exercise. Ask yourself, if I died tomorrow, what would truly matter about how I lived today? This cuts through the noise of maintaining social personas and reveals what's actually important. Second, embrace identity fluidity. Stop introducing yourself with fixed labels. Don't say I am a job title or I am a relationship status. Try saying right now, I'm exploring, or currently I'm learning. This linguistic shift might seem small, but it rewires how you relate to change. You stop seeing evolution as loss and start seeing it as the natural order of existence. So far, we've established 2 fundamental truths that Marcus Aurelius understood about why you feel lost. First, you've been navigating by external validation, giving away your power to forces you can't control. Second, you've been trying to construct a permanent self in an impermanent universe, exhausting yourself in a battle against nature itself. But here's what matters. Understanding these truths is only the beginning. If this content is resonating with you, subscribe to White Rabbit. Follow the White Rabbit for more philosophy that transforms. Your subscription is what fuels our will to keep creating this valuable content. Because now we're going deeper. What we've covered is diagnostic, understanding why you're lost. What comes next is prescriptive, the single most important teaching Marcus Aurelius offers for actually finding your way. This isn't about coping with being lost. This is about discovering that the concept of being lost was an illusion all along. Stay with me. The return to the inner citadel. You're not lost. You've just been looking for yourself in the wrong place. Here's where Marcus Aurelius becomes truly radical. In his Meditations, he describes what he calls the inner citadel, a fortress within you that cannot be breached by external circumstances. He writes, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." This isn't escapism, it's the opposite. Marcus is saying that you've been running around the external world trying to find yourself, when the entire time, the only place you could ever truly be found is within. Think about what this means. You feel lost because you're constantly asking, what should I do? What career should I pursue? What city should I live in? What relationship should I be in? These are all external questions, and external questions can only ever produce external, temporary answers. But Marcus redirects the question entirely. He asks instead, what kind of person am I in the process of becoming? What virtues am I cultivating? How am I responding to what happens to me? These are internal questions, and internal questions produce internal permanent answers. The inner citadel is your character, your virtue, your integrity. It's the part of you that remains constant regardless of circumstances. You can lose your job, but you can't lose your work ethic. You can lose your relationship, but you can't lose your capacity for love. You can lose your reputation, but you can't lose your honor unless you give it away yourself. This is why you feel lost. Not because you don't know where to go, but because you've forgotten that you've been carrying your destination inside you the entire time. In 1533, Sir Thomas More, Lord Chancellor of England, was imprisoned in the Tower of London. His crime? Refusing to endorse King Henry VIII's divorce and break with the Catholic Church. More had been the king's most trusted advisor, a humanist scholar, a man of immense influence. Now he was locked in a cell, awaiting execution. Here's what's remarkable. More's letters from the tower show no panic, no existential despair. He wasn't lost. He knew exactly who he was and what he stood for. When his own daughter visited him and begged him to simply sign the oath and save his life, he explained, "I die the king's good servant, but God's first." His identity wasn't tied to his position or his safety. It was tied to his conscience. When they finally led him to the scaffold, More joked with the executioner, adjusted his beard so it wouldn't be caught in the blade, and faced death with complete equanimity. Not because he wasn't afraid, but because he'd spent his life building an inner citadel that external circumstances, even execution, couldn't touch. He died, but he was never lost. Because he knew that his true self existed in a space beyond the reach of kings, towers, or executioners' axes. Right now, you're probably feeling lost because you're measuring yourself by metrics that have nothing to do with who you actually are. You're worried about falling behind your peers. You're anxious about whether you're on the right path. You're comparing your internal experience to everyone else's curated external presentation on social media. But here's what Marcus and Thomas More understood. There is no right path outside of you. There's only your path, the one that aligns with your deepest values and virtues. You feel lost because you've been asking, am I successful? Am I loved? Am I respected? These are external questions, and their answers will always leave you feeling empty because they depend on things outside your control. Instead, ask, am I acting with integrity? Am I being courageous in the face of my fears? Am I showing up as the person I want to be, regardless of the outcome? These are internal questions. And once you shift your focus from external validation to internal virtue, the feeling of being lost dissolves. Not because you suddenly know what to do, but because you realize that who you're being matters more than what you're doing. First, define your core virtues. Marcus operated from 4 cardinal virtues: wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. What are yours? Write down 3 to 5 values that, if you lived by them consistently, would make you feel aligned with yourself regardless of external circumstances. These become your North Star, not your career, not your relationships, not your achievements, your character. Second, daily evening reflection. Marcus did this every night. Review your day and ask, did I act according to my virtues today? Where did I compromise them? Where did I embody them? Don't judge yourself harshly. This isn't about perfection, it's about direction. Over time, this practice builds the inner citadel brick by brick, creating a stable sense of self that external chaos can't shake. The profound truth Marcus teaches us is this: you were never lost. You just forgot that the only place you needed to be was inside yourself. The external world will always be turbulent, chaotic, uncertain. But the inner citadel, your character, your virtue, your integrity, that's the one thing in this universe that belongs entirely to you. And once you make that your home, you'll never feel lost again. So let's bring this together. You feel lost because you've been navigating by external validation, building a sense of self on the shifting sands of other people's opinions. You feel lost because you've been trying to construct a permanent identity in an impermanent universe, fighting against the natural flow of change. And most profoundly, you feel lost because you've been searching for yourself everywhere except the only place you can actually be found, within. Marcus Aurelius teaches us that the path forward isn't about finding the right career, the right city, the right relationship, though those things have their place. It's about building an inner citadel of character and virtue that remains standing regardless of what storms rage outside. It's about shifting from external questions to internal ones. From what should I do to who am I becoming? From am I successful to am I acting with integrity? The feeling of being lost is an invitation. It's your soul telling you that you've been looking in the wrong direction. Turn inward, build your citadel, define your virtues, and live by them. Because once you do, you'll discover what Marcus knew 2,000 years ago. The only true north that matters is the one that exists within you. Thank you for following the White Rabbit. If this video impacted you, share it with someone who needs to hear this. I've prepared a special playlist for you to continue this journey. You'll find it in the description. See you in the next video, fellow thinker.